Hello and welcome to another episode of R.O.A.R, the 90s Rave Podcast. My name's Tom Latcham, also with my co-presenter Chrissy Richards, and today's special guest is the legendary boss of Juggernaut label V Recordings. He's a man who launched the careers of some of the biggest names in jungle and drum and bass, while also being one of the 90s rave scene's top DJs, and he remains so to this day.
He is also an absolute gentleman and the man with the nicest smile in drum and bass.
Where is he?
Welcome.
I need to meet this guy.
We'd like to welcome to you Bryan Gee. Hello.
Oh, yeah, man. It's cool to be here, man. Big up Tom and the crew.
How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm still kind of buzzing from the weekend.
Yeah, of course. Well, so the weekend, for people who don't know, Bryan played out his first gig on a boat in Prague, right?
Yeah, man. I thought I was going to be Rusty G, but Bryan Gee came back and did the business. It was wicked. I played on a boat in Prague.
And what was it like?
It was amazing, awesome. We just sailed up and down the river until we got outside of Prague for about 6 hours, and we just played music to a crazy, up for it, having it crowd, and it just made me realize how much what we're missing. And I tell you the truth, I just savored every single second of it. Right? I didn't take 1 second of it for granted because we haven't been doing this playing DJing and partying for so long. And so I made sure every second I enjoyed. You get what I'm saying? I savored it. It was just amazing. And it's just kind of got me kind of wanting more again now, because during lockdown now, I've managed to kind of accept Saturday night. I'm just going to be watching Netflix or sitting in the garden or whatever. And it's kind of, I'm getting used to it now. You get what I'm saying? I'm not kind of like having cold turkeys, like, everyone's different. And I've seen some people reacting different to not being able to continue working. And some people are like almost having nervous breakdown, some DJs or performers and artists, because it's what we love. And so it's very hard to just lose that and find, if you haven't got other things in your life that you can focus on and deal with, it can be a weird place that you find yourself in. And I've seen some people really not being, because it's the center, it's the whole of their life. You get what I'm saying? And for me, it is the whole of my life. I've been, running V for like 27 years now. I've been DJing for like 150 years, right? So
you look really good for your age.
So music is completely everything. I wake up in the morning and it's about the label. The weekends, it's about DJing, promoting parties or whatever. Everything I do, you get what I'm saying? I mean, if I've got to put, I can't even put curtains up. I got to call my brother because I don't know how to do anything else. You get what I'm saying? Because all I know is music. Since I was a little kid, I used to play sound system. I got into music really early, from I was like 13, 14. And so I didn't do much at school. I skived school. Is that the word you use, skive? Yeah, I didn't go to school, and I was just playing music. I had to make it through musical. It was just that or nothing. And so this is my life, you get what I'm saying? And a lot of people are the same as well. So it hasn't been easy. But with the label now, fortunately, when the lockdown happened, the label just kind of blew up a bit more in a weird way, because I was scared, thinking, everyone's going to be skint, saving their money, staying indoors, not being able to spend money. And I just put an album out, this album I was working on for like a year and a half, and we just released it the week of lockdown. You get what I'm saying? I was like, to my label manager, shall we put this back? And he was like, no, let's just take a chance. We can't do that now because distributors have got it. It's all in ready on Beatport, this, that. So it's too much just to change. And weirdly enough, it's been our biggest seller for years. We've had the most download sales, we've had the most t-shirt sales, merchandise sales during lockdown. It's just been crazy. So for that side of the business, it's been great because people have been sitting down indoors just doing nothing. So they're buying music, downloading music, buying gear. So that's worked out for me. But missing the gigs.
Do you remember what gigs were like? I've forgotten. No. I'm quite jealous about this Prague.
Yeah, I mean, I was getting as I said to you, I was getting a lot of green eyes and red eyes kind of coming through my inbox over the weekend. Not in a bad way, but just like DJs and even punters like really angry because I posted some clips on my Instagram, and it was just people were like, you see, how come they can do it and we can't do it? So people were more having a go at the British government and our setup here, seeing what. But as I said to you, the people in Prague, they locked down really early. They locked down in March because I was even nervous going out there. I said I was fully tooled up, gloves, more gloves, mask, more mask, you get what I'm saying? Hoodie, the whole thing. And then when I got there, I was ready for the fight, the war, I was prepared for it, you get what I'm saying? And like when I got there was no one wearing masks. From the whole of 2 days in Prague, I didn't see one mask because of how they dealt with it.
So you've got another gig in Zurich coming up, which...
Switzerland
do you think
now,
that this is likely to actually... This is where you're going to start... You guys are going to start getting your bookings abroad?
I think there's a few... Like, it's not everywhere because you got places like Spain and Portugal and other places that are really like, spiking and whatever. But there are places in Europe which over a few months now have just kind of like had a low, like... percentage of people with COVID, and they got in line. They locked down their borders early, and so they haven't got so much of a problem, and they're getting on with things in a few places. So. When do
you anticipate that things might get back to normal in the UK? Or do you
mate,
what's the chat among you guys?
This is weird, you know what I mean? Because when it first started, we all kind of just writ off the year. As far as we're concerned, there is going to be no 2020. That's it. 2020 is done, and over the last few months, things have changed because no one knows what's happening next. You get what I'm saying? This is out, and over the last few months, we've seen bars and things developing and changing, and now there's places where they want to do outdoor events and stuff like that. So I wouldn't have thought that. When the first lockdown started, I didn't think any of this would be possible. So there's a few things that are starting to kind of like open air events and drive by things like
I think that's something else.
Just
driving. Not drive-bys. You don't want that. That's something wholly different.
Yeah, drive-ins and stuff like that. So I think people are thinking more about ways of trying to make things happen now, because a lot of things, desperation, people are going down, clubs are going down, and staff and people are losing their jobs and all that. So people are scratching their heads and trying to find a way to make it happen. Do
you think that the UK dance scene will ever return to normal, or?
Oh, please, I hope so. Don't say that. I mean, I'm one of the ones that kind of like, I'm optimistic and I'm thinking like, this is going to be blown over by next year. I mean, I'm all the time I've always looked as like the end of the year, although I don't know why, because no one knows how long this is going to last, and it could last longer than we think. You get what I'm saying? But I've always thought to myself, round about the end of the year, hopefully not, man. I mean, I'm trying to be positive and stuff and looking at a few places in Europe, but then when you look at other places in the world and you see it spiking again, and you're thinking, wow, look at that, Malta. We was all getting hyped to go to Malta. I'm supposed to be playing in Greece in September. It's supposed to be like a big party in Greece, but I'm hearing now that Greece, Corfu's kind of...
is spiking and
there you go.
possibly going onto the quarantine list.
You just put the nail in the coffin. Thanks, I was holding on.
Sorry, dude.
Sorry.
You and your sit down.
Well, I told him about the rave that's coming up that he's playing at, and I informed him just earlier that it's actually going to be a sit-down rave, and the disappointment on Paul Bryan's face was something
I'm very
sorry.
I blame him, to be fair. I mean, who goes to a rave to sit down?
I'm just grasping on anything.
I'm a big fan of the idea of sit-down raves. I've got to say, it's a thing we keep coming back to in this podcast. I'm getting old, my legs are getting tired. I quite like sit down and listen to some music, but I can imagine as a DJ, it's probably not the same.
We would take anything right now.
Well, we'll talk about V Recordings shortly, because you set that up with Nigel.
Yeah.
Before we do that, we'll do a little quick get to know you, where we do a quick fire round. We just ask you some questions, and there's no prevaricating, and you just give us quick answers back. Chrissy, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. What is your age?
My age? Last year, I forgot, and my mum had to tell me. Seriously. And I tried to put a year down, And she was like, nah. And I had to check, and it was right. I was born 1964. So, you know what it is?
56.
After a while, you stop counting.
Absolutely.
You're like,
Absolutely.
I can't remember anymore. And you don't want to remember anymore. You get what I'm saying?
Where are you originally from?
Oh, Cheltenham.
Where do you live now?
I live in Peckham. We call it Peckham.
Peckham?
Yeah,
Dulwich.
Dulwich. I like to say Dulwich.
Of course
Sounds
you do.
better.
So it's better for your house price. And what's your relationship status?
I'm like with my girlfriend. Been together for like, God, I'm terrible. I'm terrible. It's like sometimes I'm like, I say 7 years, and she goes, "What? We've been together longer than that." So I'm be careful what I say.
Long term.
We've been together for a long time.
Long term.
That's it.
Do you have any kids? If yes, how old?
I got one, one boy, and I'd love to have more. I know she wants more because she hasn't got
hello.
more. All right, she wants more, but I've only got one, and he's a great boy, man.
How old is he?
Oh, Jordan's like 34 now. Or something. He's brilliant. He is, man. He's on Channel 4 News, does the sports report, and he's on Talk Sport.
What's your favourite non-rave tune?
Chelsea.
Liquidator. He's a big Chelsea
It's gotta
fan.
be that one there, man. That makes me happy every time I hear that. Serious.
Who's the most famous person you've ever met?
Either Quincy Jones or Jesse Jackson. Which one's probably more famous?
Who's your celebrity hates? Which celebrity really gets your goat?
Kanye West.
And that's not the first time that's been an answer, I don't think.
No, it wasn't. Do you have a sporting hero?
I mean, probably my first sporting era growing up would have been Muhammad Ali, Bruce Lee.
What would you say is your best trait?
I'm just a great guy.
Good answer.
Yeah.
And what's your worst trait? What's the worst thing about you?
Always losing things. Someone says if they walk behind me, they'll be rich. Right? 'Cause serious, like, you give me something, I'll lose it in a minute.
Brilliant.
Serious thing. And I'm very serious. I don't know how. There's no one that can lose this thing so quick. And it does my head in as well because you've just had it.
And finally, tell us one thing about you that will surprise everyone.
That I'm 56, but I look 26.
I think you might be pushing on the odd 26, man. I've got to be honest. You look good, but you don't look that good.
Oh, come on.
You're listening to the 90s Rave Podcast. You can get in touch with us. Hello at the 90s Rave Podcast.co.uk, and we are on all your social media channels. We're here with Bryan Gee, the V Recordings legend.
Massive, are you ready to rock out inside the paradise?
So we're still here on R.O.A.R, the 90s Rave Podcast with V Recordings Don, Bryan Gee. Bryan, V was founded in 1993 through your friendship with Jumpin' Jack Frost, Nigel. Why did you decide to start a label?
I was working at Rhythm King Records at the time, and I was just doing like club promotion. It was all like Rhythm King was a very kind of commercial based label. You get what I'm saying? You had your Betty Boo. Your S Express.
First album I bought was Betty Boo.
Yeah, and then you had like
on record.
Then they went a bit cutting edge like Baby Ford. Remember Baby Ford? Yeah, so they had people like that there, but it was very kind of poppy, housey kind of bomb, that, you know what I mean, and Merlin and all this kind of stuff, and so they kind of got a bit edgy, and they kind of, when I was working and now I would try and tell them to do this and do that and blah blah blah, and they would listen to me, and who was it gave me the track, Your Name's Not Down, You're Not Coming In. Who done that track?
That was Kicks Like a Mule.
Kicks Like a Mule, you get what I'm saying? Yeah.
Your name's not down, you're not coming in.
And so someone sent me the track, and I went to Rhythm King, and I was like, yeah, you need to put this tune out and blah blah, and they didn't want to put it out. They just thought it was a joke tune, silly tune, you get what I'm saying? And it ended up being a number one. And so they thought, shit, Brian's talking a bit of sense here, you get what I'm saying? So they stopped ignoring what I was saying, you get what I'm saying? And then like I was playing tracks like Moby, Go. Because I was DJing, not much, but DJing. I wasn't like Frosty or Fabio and Groove Rider, but I was getting a few little gigs here and stuff. You get what I'm saying? And, you know, Moby was a big tune, and I was telling them about Moby, and they signed it, and it went to number 1.
Wow.
And that's how Moby's career kind of like...
Does he ever thank you?
Nope. Cause I was, yeah. And then so they gave me a little label to set up, and I set it up. We had a few little releases, like we signed Congress, 40 miles away from home. Din 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 din. R&S was kicking ass at the time, you get what I'm saying? R&S Records was really kicking ass. So I was like, yeah, man, these tunes, we need to sign these tunes and all that. So we invited Renard over from R&S, and we did a deal with R&S Records, you get what I'm saying? And to put out everything from R&S, we would put out in the UK, you get what I'm saying? So that was a great little move for us, you get what I'm saying? And I was friends with Dave Angel, because Dave just lived down the road from me, Dave Angel, and he was making tunes at the time. He just made a little bootleg of the Eurythmics called Sweet Dreams. RCA put it out or something like that. We gave some of Dave's music to Renard at R&S, and he loved it, but he signed him to R&S Records, and everything was going good. And then one day I went to Rhythm, so you know, R&S UK's popping off. They're giving me this label called the White Label. We signed another track by George Kelly called What Have You Done? Where Did You Go? Is it all in air for me? You remember that tune?
Yeah, of course.
Dun dun dun. Dun 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 dun.
It was One Try featuring Jen, wasn't it? That's it, yeah.
And the boss Martin, who run Rhythm King, he had a nephew, and he was like, Bryan, my nephew's trying to make tunes as well. Why don't you like go into the studio with him and bring some of your ideas and stuff? So I went over to the studio and stuff, and we did a couple of tracks, and we released them on this, we call it the Megas Project. And we released them on Rhythm King as well. It's just a second label from Rhythm King, or the White Label, and so we put that. And just after that, I went into the office one day, because apart from that, we used to do club promotions, and so like we used to mail out all the Shut Up and Dance early stuff. That time Rebel MC was called Rebel MC, and we used to mail out all his stuff as well. And we was the first one. I remember when Johnny Urchi So and all that came into the office. And that time it was his first tune, you know, Johnny Earl and all that. So it was my job to go to Rage and wherever and find Fabio and Groove Rider and all the DJs and EUR, give them all these hot TPs and all that. So, you know what I mean? That was my job at Rhythm King, to service the DJs and stuff. So I was loving it. And they just said, yeah, we're going to have to make some cuts and close down a few of the labels and stuff. And yours is going to be, your department's going to be one of them. But before that happened, there was these guys from Bristol, and we signed a house track from them. They were called Absolute 2, and they were always saying to me, oh yeah, I got some friends in Bristol, and they're making this like jungle music sort of stuff, and you should have a listen to it. But I didn't take no notice and shit. You get what I'm saying? Because you know what I mean. And then
it'll never take off.
Yeah, and then when the label closed, I took the CD, or it was tape at the time. I took the tape with me that he gave me, and I listened to it, and I thought, this is all right. Some of this stuff's okay. And I looked, and it was like some, you know, Ryan Williams. And I phoned him up, and he said, come down to Bristol, and we can talk, because I like the stuff, you know what I mean? So I said, Frost, come, let's go Bristol, man, because these guys in Bristol are making some wicked tunes. And we went down there, and I met Ryan, and then he had his friend called Kirk, who happened to be crossed, and Ryan was Ronnie. So like, you know what I'm saying? And then they had another friend called Di, and they all like said, yeah, you know what I mean, we're making tunes, but we ain't got no label or nothing like that. And I was telling them about my journey, that
Ka-ching.
Yeah, no, but I just said Rhythm King is finished, but I wouldn't mind starting a label and putting out your stuff, you get what I'm saying? Because I just loved, like, they had a kind of like early jungle thing, like what Reinforce was doing, but they had their own little Bristol kind of vibe to it. It wasn't so like dark as the Bristol stuff, you know what I mean? It was more bouncy. And I loved it. So we just took a punt on it and just decided to start a label. And I was in Camden Market because I had a friend there called R.O.A.R, and he had a stall, Camden Tunes and all that. You know R.O.A.R? Yeah. Well, because I used to always bring white labels down there, boxes of records to R.O.A.R. And me and R.O.A.R was really good friends. You get what I'm saying? So I just hung out there all day with him, smoked weed. We used to go. There was a pub just around the corner from the market, and we used to go there all the time. And next door to the pub, there was a record shop, and it was called Vinyl Experience. I needed a name for the label, so I called it Vinyl Experience. That was the first when the first V release was called Vinyl, because I just nicked it from the record shop in Camp. I was out there drinking and I couldn't think of a name, so I thought Vinyl Experience. You know what I'm saying? So we called it Vinyl Experience, and then the first 2 releases came out as under Vinyl Experience, and we just thought this is a mouthful, so we just took off the I know experience, and just went with V.
Well, it's easier. That's
much easier. So yeah,
I love that as well, because when you ask people why did they choose their DJ name or their label names, and you kind of, most people I think expect this really wonderful story, and it's usually always something really quite funny.
It just all falls into.
That's
what I'm saying. It all falls into place. There wasn't no rocket science thinking about it, no boardroom meetings or nothing like that. It's just we just fell into it, sort of thing. You get what I'm saying?
Drum and bass is often regarded as a London thing, and there was a documentary recently, the Terry Turbo documentary, where it was talking about London being the home of drum and bass. Being someone who's lived in London but actually pushed a lot of Bristol artists and the Bristol sound, does that narrative annoy you?
No, I understand it. Because if you even talk to some of these guys as well, if you talk to the Bristol guys and all that, they would say, you know what I mean, their influences was listening to Bookham, Hype, and all the things that were coming out of London. So I think they understand
giving it a Bristol twist.
They just brought their influence to it. But it was very a London-based thing. You had DJ SS doing a lot of stuff up in the Midlands, and then apart from that, really, it was just more Moving Shadow doing their thing up over in Hertford and Ipswich and all that kind of area of the country, and that was it. And then the further you went up north, it was more of a happier hardcore sort of sound. You get what I'm saying? So it was, Manchester and all that. It was more your piano-y kind of hardcore stuff. But down south more, it was more bassy, more rolling, more jungly, more urban. You get what I'm saying? And so it was London where that kind of original sound originated from.
We would love to continue bringing you quality content, but with better and more up-to-date equipment. If you could chuck some pennies in our direction and help secure the future of this fantastic project, that would be awesome. Our GoFundMe page is gofundme.com/the 90s Rave Podcast. Now we're going to give some massive big ups to some generous folk. They are Halcyon and Jay Ransom, Mark Simmons, aka Hovis Buns, Ruben Whirlage, Mel Casey, Tom Evans, Tom Lloyd, Arthur Roski and Ica Green. Thank you very much from all of us at R.O.A.R. You're in tune to R.O.A.R with myself, Chrissy Richards, and Tom Latcham. We are here with our special guest, Bryan Gee. So, Bryan, V was left out of a D&B Arena documentary about the history of music, despite you helping to shape the scene.
Their loss, yeah. That's all I can say.
It caused a stir, didn't it? How did you feel about it?
But it caused a stir. But I wasn't really angry about V not being in it. That wasn't what we were angry about. We were just angry about the documentary itself. It kind of they had said at the time when they were doing the documentary, drum and bass. History of drum and bass through the eyes of Drum and Bass Arena. No one wouldn't bat eyelid about it, because it's their vision, and everybody knows Drum and Bass Arena can very focus on a lot of the commercial side of things as well. But they kind of branded it as the history of drum and bass jungle. So when you're going to do that, you got to do it properly.
You have to do your research and remember.
If you're doing it through your eyes or whatever, then you can get away with, well, this is how I saw it. You know what I'm saying? It's RC. But if you're going to make this look like the history of drum and bass and jungle, make sure you do it right, because you're gonna get a lot of flack if you don't. And that's what my beef was that I looked at the documentary, and it wasn't because V wasn't in it, but it just wasn't covering for something that was taking that title, the history of drum and bass. It wasn't covering the real history, and so we was angry because a lot of people were important people that probably weren't cool names now, weren't as like, oh, they're not Chase and Status, or they're not Sigma or whatever. But without these guys, shit wouldn't happen and wouldn't be at this stage where it is now. You get what I'm saying? So don't try and write history and rewrite history. And because I got people like this guy in the office, Particle. He's a young producer at Critical, but he's like 21, 22, something. He's young. You get what I'm saying? And he's well into jungle. If for him to sit down, he's sitting down and he's watching that documentary, and that's the history of jungle, drum and bass, as far as he's concerned, because it's coming from a good source, drum and bass arena. So if you're going to let the kids and all that, like, you want to educate them, you got to make sure it's right. You get what I'm saying? Because they're seeing that and they're thinking, oh, I see Sigma in there, I see Chase and Status, and what's not to be.
How did Drum and Bass Arena react to your upset about this?
Well, they the next day they call me and they apologise.
Right.
And because I know them guys, I think about it, I know Risky, and I know the guys behind Drum and Bass Arena, and I said to them, how the fuck did this get past? How the fuck did you lot sit down at the end of this documentary when it was made and said, yeah, we're happy? How could you have done that? Because it missed so much important things, important people, and it said so much wrong things as well that made me angry. You get what I'm saying? And so I just thought to myself, from people that have been in, I would expect this from some people that came from Netflix, or some people that haven't got a clue, but we're going to make some drum and bass documentary. So if that was coming from Amazon or something, I would expect that from them, but not from Drum and Bass Arena. And so that's it wasn't V, no, but how can you make a documentary about drum and bass? Shy Effects is not in it. The Shy Effects, Ray Keith is not in it. DJ Rap's not in it. Brazilian drum and bass is not in it, which has been so important to the development of drum and bass. No DJ Markey and people like that in there. Bristol, the only person they talked to was Roni Size. It's just so much. I can go on and on and on and on. So much important things, and then they're spending so much time talking to Take That. They can put, Take That can get, no disrespect, but what the fuck's Take That got to do with drum and bass? Oh, it's because it's Take That, and it's like, people recognize that bullshit. So it felt to me was like, let's just get all the cool names on this that are into drum and bass more than do a proper documentary.
Do you feel that V often doesn't get enough credit?
It doesn't bother me. Seriously, just because you know what, we just it's something that we're used to. You get what I'm saying? We're a black run label. You get what I'm saying? So I've always been aware that, you get what I'm saying, we're not going to get the doors ain't going to be as open as much as white run labels.
You think that's true? You think that's genuinely true?
Bloody true.
Well,
I've been in this business long enough to see it and know it. You get what I'm saying? We've had a journey where when we first started, the face of V was just like black. And then when we started to work with Movement, and we had two white faces, Oliver and Ado, all of a sudden we were doing Homeland festivals, and we were doing all these festivals and all these doors, and we was doing what's that thing that started in Clapham Junction now, the thing in the park. It started in Clapham Common. SW4.
SW4.
We were the first ones to doing them things. All them things, we were, Homelands and all these places, Nebworth, all the festivals, what you see Hospital doing now and stuff. It was Movement and V doing all them things, because we had two white faces running the label, running the business. Soon as they left and it was just me and Jordan again, all the doors started to close.
Really?
Yeah. And then soon as I got another white guy now that runs the label called Gareth, as soon as he started to run, he's the face of the label, like goes to the meetings, and soon as all of a sudden doors are open again.
How does that make you feel?
Well, you know what? It makes me feel shit, but it's when you kind of you've grown up like seeing all this. It's nothing new. You get what I'm saying? We've always had to fight against, or not fight, but work that extra harder in everything else. So this is no difference. You get what I'm saying? When you're black, you're always gonna have to work twice as harder to impress or to open doors and all that. And it's been going on for so long. I don't try to moan about it. I just try and work hard. You get what I'm saying? Them things drive me. You get what I'm saying? Those things drive me to kind of like work harder, kick those doors open. You get what I'm saying? I can sit here and complain all the time. Oh, it's not fair. But nah, I just get on with it.
Will it ever change?
Well, I never thought it would. And over the last couple of months, I was saying to Jordan, you get what I'm saying? This is the first time because, growing up and all that, we've seen all kind of things, riots, and straight after Brixton riots, I was there, Bristol riots, and straight after these things, you always hear there's going to be big changes, they're going to start, government's going to do this and blah, blah, and then after a couple of months or whatever, it gets died down, everyone forgets about it, and everything gets back to normal. But this time, since the guy from
George Floyd.
Oh, George Floyd.
Since Floyd and all that. Now it's like I've seen a big kind of shift, not big shift, but I see like more people, like more places questioning themselves. I see more doors kind of slightly opened and all that. You get what I'm saying? And I'm seeing people, and not just we talking. I'm seeing a lot more like white people saying they're trying to understand a bit more about this problem, whereas before it was just us talking about it and looked like we were moaning about it. But I'm seeing a lot of white people now kind of realizing that maybe they have had more privileges without knowing it. You get what I'm saying? But it's just the way our life is, and it's not your fault if you're white and you get that job over a black person. It's not your fault, but it's just how the system is. You get what I'm saying? If I was to go to a major record label or a major business or whatever, and the CEO was black, I'll be shocked. But you get what I'm saying? But it's just normal now because you don't expect that. So if I did see that, it would be shocked. But you should, you know what I'm saying? You should see these things. But I only want to see these things happen for the right reason. And I'm worried now that because of all of this, everybody's kind of like, oh, we got to be... I don't want them to start just plucking black people from anywhere who's not good enough for the job or whatever, just because they're black. I want us to get the jobs or get those positions or whatever, be in them places because we're good and we've earned it.
What did you make of the, as you spent such a long time in Bristol and you're from the West Country, what did you make of the Black Lives Matter movement pulling down the statue of the slave trader Edward Colston earlier on this year and throwing it in the lake?
It was a great thing to see. It was a powerful thing to see. It's weird because I've always been going to Bristol for, I used to live in Bristol and we used to go to a club called Colston Halls. You get what I'm saying?
I've got a feeling that Goldie did his live show there and everything.
Represent played there a lot. It's a real sort of nice place, like where they do big events, and there've been many Represent shows there. And I actually did a show just before lockdown with D Minds and Clips, and I never knew the history of Colston Halls. You get what I'm saying? So when I saw it, I was like, what? That we play there all the time, and I never realized that there was a man called Colston Hall, and he was some slave trader and whatever, and he owned.
Yes, that's how he made all his money. Basically,
there's schools called Colston. There's a lot of things in Bristol called Colston, and I never ever realized the what it meant. You know what I mean? So that was surprising. And when I saw them pull it down, I thought to myself, good on them. You get what I'm saying? Because how can you have a statue of somebody like that? Paraded in the city, who's done all those things. But I do believe that if you pull it down, you should have at least a museum or somewhere where people can be educated and learn about these things.
So there should be in museums rather than as statues.
Yeah, and I think they should be placed in a museum or something, and so because I don't think it should be hidden, all this history. So pulling it down, it's like hiding the history.
So you grew up in Gloucester, like in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And on one of our other episodes, we spoke to Fabio and Groove about the racism they experienced in South London. What was life like for a young black man in Gloucester?
It was what you just grew up. You know what? It's like when you grow into something and, you know, you just don't know any different. So it was just always just like we were black and we knew where we stood. You get what I'm saying? You know, we knew that, we were kind of looked at as second class or whatever. We knew that we had to, sometimes we don't help ourselves as with black people as well. You get what I'm saying? But growing up in Gloucester, it wasn't like I was in a place where, I'll tell you the truth, I would feel more sorry for the Asian people when I was young, because we blacks, we stuck together and we would be in our like black communities, and we were strong as we were strong together. You get what I'm saying? And so no one could. I mean, if we went off into the woods or like into the Cotswold outside of Gloucester kind of area or whatever, you might come across racism or whatever, and you might be in trouble. But we stayed in town all the time. You get what I'm saying? And there was a lot of strong black community and all that. So the racism was more aimed at the Asian people. People would call them back then, I don't know, Pakis. I don't know if they use that word anymore.
I'm sure some people still do and definitely shouldn't.
Twats, obviously.
Pakis and all that. And Asian people were more, they were together because they were but they weren't aggressive, or they didn't show that kind of we're not having it. We're not taking no bullshit from anyone. And so they were looked at as the weak sort of people to pick on. You get what I'm saying? So white people would be, or the races of people, whatever, they would pick on, it would be more race in Asian people getting attacked or whatever. You get what I'm saying? Because that they didn't have the gangs to kind of fight back or whatever. Like we blacks now, if someone happened to, we would call all our boys and we'd have a go back. You get, and some people saying, "Boy, I ain't fucking with them Jamaicans, man," because you know it's just too much. Are
you a tasty bloke? Can you handle yourself?
Back in the day, I used to, yeah. I could, you know,
I mean, you're 56 now, and you really shouldn't be rolling around having fights. I mean, that would be very unbecoming. But
I could find myself around the ring properly, you know what I mean? But I was, you know what I mean? I was never a fighter. I was a lover. But the Asian thing, they would get picked on more because they were looked at as more weak. And so, growing up in Gloucester as a black, we just stuck to our own, and it was there, but it wasn't something that was like, was that to kind of like be careful when I'm coming home from school because I might get, you know what I mean?
I'm DJ, can't even remember his name, Lunacy, and you're listening to, and now I've forgotten the name of the podcast.
Listen carefully again.
So you were an early admirer of a number of current big-name artists, which include Dillinja, Roni Size, Represent, and released some of their earlier tracks, which really means you're to thank for helping them to become such prolific artists.
I mean, I think anybody would be stupid not to have done that, really.
So how does that make you feel?
So it makes me feel like I just did what anybody else would have done, because sometimes I don't want to sit here and take massive credit for releasing badass Dillinja tunes and badass Roni Size tunes, because I think it's a no-brainer. You get what I'm saying? You know, I just think I was just.
But you must know. But you must have known that they were amazing, these guys, because you must have come across loads of stuff that was rubbish, and you wouldn't put it out.
That's right. Dillinja was a guy that just grew up from around our ends. He grew up in Brixton where we lived. You get what I'm saying? So he was always kind of like a fan of watching us, what we were doing and stuff. So he was influencing. He used to get the tape packs of me, Frost, Fabio, and Groove Rider and stuff, and he was very into Shaka and all that sort of stuff. So he grew up listening to us, and his influence would be from sets we played and all that stuff.
Are you his hero?
If you was to talk to Carl, I'm not gonna lie, because me and Carl are like really cool and we still get on up to now. And if you know, sometimes I'll just say, "Shut up, Carl," but he would get drunk and they say, "It's all about Bryan Gee, you know," and so you're trying.
I mean, everyone could use a friend like that, to be honest.
How can the king cut Dillinja kind of be giving me props because he is the king, you get what I'm saying? So, but he would look at me, Frost, not just me, he'd look at me, Frost, and Fabio and Groove as really important influences that he could feed off and get his vibe from, you get what I'm saying? Because he was too young to go out to clubs or parties, you get what I'm saying, at the time when he was making music. I remember Dillinja when he was making tunes and he was a young kid. He couldn't even dare come. I didn't think he'd be allowed to come to a party. So that's how young he started. But he needed to get that influence because he wasn't going to clubs, so he needed to hear that influence from somewhere. And he had a guy called R.O.A.R who we used to go raving with, and he used to live next door to Dillinja, and he would give him all the tapes, and that's where Dillinja learnt it from. So he would always kind of look back and say Bryan was important, not just like, you know, in letting him know what was going down.
And did you know that Dillinja was going to go on to be massive? And the same with Roni Size, of course, because won the Mercury Music Prize in 1997.
Dillinja just had that sound. He just came right, and no one sounded like Dillinja. He just like had that bass and the way he done his breaks and stuff, because he wasn't copying anyone. He was just stuck in his yard, and he just came with his complete new sound, his sound, and it was just raw. He just had this raw kind of jungle drum and bass sound, and everything, the hi-hats, the snares, everything just sounded raw, and no one could even stand up like that. So instantly you liked it because it was just different, you get what I'm saying?
And what about Roni Size?
Ronnie,
I mean, won the Mercury Music Prize in 1997, and that basically, I think, you might disagree with me, but was pretty much a real game changer for drum and bass. You know, it launched it onto an international scene.
That was such an important period, and I remember before that period, you know, I was so unhappy at the time because Ronnie and all them, they were releasing tunes on V and stuff, and V was just getting to like the biggest label in the world, right? It was just like, because their music was so good. That's how I felt. That, you know what I mean? Their music, Roni Size, Cross, Die, Sov, just bangers after bangers after bangers, and V was just wow. And then Talking Loud came along, and I didn't really understand. I didn't see the big picture. All I just saw was this big major coming in and taking my artists away, signing them, you get what I'm saying? And I was pissed off, serious, and I was really pissed off, but I just knew that, you know, that's just how the business goes. We are independent labels, and our job is to find these young nuggets, golden nuggets,
and
then the majors take them on, and it all helps, doesn't it? It's just the history of the beast, you get what I'm saying?
But it helps, doesn't it? Because it shines a light on what you're doing.
But we were just a road boy, and we were just like, what? You get what I'm saying? We just like angry about it, you get what I'm saying? Because we just thought all this work we'd done, and it's gone. But we didn't see the bigger picture. We didn't realize that Talking Loud wasn't just like any other major, because they could have gone to a lot of other majors and end up doing pop drum and bass, and just like washed up or whatever, and just like you sit, and that's what I thought, because the pattern of majors signing good independent acts and then sort of making them make cheesy. Because I was even when I went to Bizarre Inc. I went to Brazil with Bizarre Inc. A couple of years ago, and so I never met them guys back in the day, and so we was all talking to me, Dave Angel, Bizarre Inc., all of us was in Brazil at a gig, and they said the same thing, you know, they were making sick tunes, and then they got signed, and as soon as they got signed, I think the majors was like really trying to make them do like, what was it? They started to make poppy.
Well, they were originally on was it Vinyl Solution?
Vinyl Solution, yeah, that's so right.
Like Plutonic,
playing with knives and all them kind of tunes. Yeah. And then, you got to be mine. Why?
Rubbish.
Well, it was the same with...
you can see the big difference, and that was the major influence, kind of like cheesing them out, sort of popping them out.
We interviewed Lunacy, and it was the same thing with after he released Sesame Street with Smarties, they then made him try and do a ballad.
There you go. So for me, that was my vision of where this was going to go, you get what I'm saying? But I should have realised with a cool cat like Giles Peterson behind Talking Loud, that was never going to happen. And what happened is he just said, boys, just continue what you're doing, but they enhanced it. They just kind of like, they put vocals on the music. You get what I'm saying? Because at the time, the stuff on V was just raw jungle, set speed, fashion, trust me, and they brought vocals to it and, you know, made them into songs. And also they invested in making them into a group and forming, instead of just being individuals, they formed them and call them Represent. You get what I'm saying? And they brought in Annalie and Dynamite as front singers, and they invested in them, took them around the world. And trust me, you know, the doors that opened for drum and bass, you know, if they stayed to V, we wouldn't have got nowhere. We wouldn't even got one step up those stairs. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. So I got to thank Talking Loud for serious. I had to take my words back and thank them, because they, you know much people I'm meeting now all over the world, and they saying to me their first experience into drum and bass was hearing Roni Size live in an environment not like your normal out, you know what I mean? Because
outside the raves.
Because they could, with the investment of Talking Loud, they managed to
gigs. They were doing gigs.
Proper gigs outside of drum and bass and reach. And then when you heard Represent, I don't care what other music you like, when you hear Represent, if you don't understand drum and bass by going to the clubs normally and hearing, like, you know what I mean, you know, Slipmat or whatever, you could understand it when you hear Represent, because they just made it just sound so fucking understandable. Who could not love Represent? It was one of the best, for me, it is still the best live drum and bass act ever.
Wow.
Ever. And there've been a lot since, you get what I'm saying? But none of them have got the energy that Represent had, you get what I'm saying? So I don't know if you guys ever had a chance to witness Represent live back in the day, but they rocked. Trust me, they rocked. They did. And so that was Talking Loud, and then they won the Mercury.
Did that effectively save the jungle and drum and bass scene? Because at that time it was quite dark. It was actually, happy hardcore was bigger than it. We talked a minute ago off mic about how the raves, you were going to through the massive happy hardcore rooms into your
small little dingy room to play drum and bass.
Do you think that saved the scene from itself in a way? Made it, there were celebs started to come, along to your gigs, because it was mainstream and the violence maybe dissipated and changed.
And then you had the same, you had your Goldie getting involved with it at the same time. So Goldie was a big influence and face. And you see with drum and bass as well, there's not enough faces and characters to kind of, you know what I mean? Because it's so where there's not so much vocals or stuff in drum and bass, so there's not those images, those, you know what I mean, stars, because it's faceless. A lot of the music is faceless in drum and bass, so that has kind of not made it kind of get over the line as easy as some other music where would have an MC or a rapper or whatever, so instantly you can buy into that image. You get what I'm saying? Some big drum and bass acts are by two guys that just don't really care about the media or being stars. You get what I'm saying? So that was the problem with drum and bass.
Did you have any idea how big it would become? Did you ever see it being this massive
No,
thing?
you never do see it. You don't, especially when you're in the middle of it. Because you get what I'm saying? I'm right in the middle, so I'm so in it. You can't see.
Rewind my selector, man. Absolutely rough, tough, and dangerous, and we don't stop the body rock until it drop.
How did you feel when it was at its most dodgy and violent before that moment that you talk about, where it made it more mainstream?
Dodgy and violent in what way?
Well, the raves, man.
You're talking jungle?
Crack cocaine, crack cocaine,
well, you know
guns, knives, all sorts.
You know what? I played in a lot of raves that had guns and shooting and stuff. You get what I'm saying? And maybe for me, it wasn't so alarming, because I said to you, before I went to that Clink Street party, I came from a place where raves would get robbed anyway. You know what I'm saying?
So you were used to it.
So it was just standard
like,
business for you.
This is just another day.
Yeah, these new raves now after Roni Size are a bit boring, frankly.
So what is your hairiest moment? If it wasn't at the raves, is there a party, your scariest moment for violence?
Yeah, quite a few actually. I remember being done over, kicked and beaten up by ICF. Is that what they call them? This is like back in '89, and we're doing this club over in Bow, and we got these crazy big massive skulls that these guys made for us. You get what I'm saying? And we used to hang them up in the club on a Friday night when we do the events and put light in them, and it used to just help, just as part of the effects and help freak people out and stuff. You get what I'm saying? And we used to take them down and all that when we weren't doing the raves. And then like someone told us that some boys are having a rave, using a nightclub, using our effects and stuff. You get what I'm saying? So we're like, I don't know nothing about ICF or nothing. Never even heard of ICF before in my life. You get what I'm saying? Jimmy Swallow, who's all I'd never heard of these guys. You get what I'm saying? But all I know is we're from Brixton, right? We're from Brixton, and we got that yardy Jamaican bomber clout vibe about us, right? So when we say bomber clout, you jump, right? So we went down there with our bomber clout, Ras clout, all the pussy clout, right?
How did it work out for you?
Right, so ask Frost, how did it work out for Frost? So me and Frost went down there now cussing our bomber clout to the guys them that we didn't know they were ICF at the time. The bomber clout, they turned around and give me and Nigel one hell of a beating. They slapped us, beat us up, because we were just coming, because of our attitude of how we would come into them. And they, listen, I'm surprised we didn't get beat up more. You get what I'm saying?
Did it teach you a lesson?
Proper. Nigel and Andy Swallow friends now and all that. You get what I'm saying? But yeah, so that was just one experience of just like, you know what I mean, getting beaten up. And then there's lots of experience in raves, like, where can I go now? My first E, when I took my first E, because it took me a long time to take an E. I used to see everybody in E, and I was like, nah, man, just strictly weed, man. Just smoke my weed, and you lot are mad with all your ecstasy and your...
How long did it take you to take it? What year did you take your first E?
I have to see the flight. It was at a party called World Party, and it was... I think it was up north or something. Not World Dance, World Party. And it was my first big rave. And I was nervous as fuck, you get what I'm saying? And I was like, because, you know, all the big raves would be like your Fabio, your Groove Rider, and your Frost and all the usual suspects. And I managed to get onto this rave. So it was big for me, you get what I'm saying? And I ended up taking an E. And like, just before, about an hour before my set, I ended up taking an E, and then never took an E before, and I just started to feel fucking like, what the fuck is going on here, man? And I ended up just like, I'm vomiting.
And that only makes you buzz more, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I couldn't, and I remember I had to find a corner, hide, and just vomit, and like, I didn't enjoy my set. I had a terrible set. You get what I'm saying?
I mean, that's what a
set.
surprise that isn't.
And then my first Donington Park was a weird experience as well, because it was like playing in Donington Park to 25,000 bar Fantasia.
Yeah. I wasn't there, but I think that I've seen the video. There's a video, isn't there, of that one?
And I've never ever like DJ'd, and my aunt is going like this so much in my life. You get what I'm saying? It was just like completely like nerve-wracking just to see first time 25,000 people in front of me, but I managed to like calm my nerves. And
how important were drugs to that rave scene for the music?
For me, obviously, from what I could see, it was very important. You know what I mean? Because E's, I remember everybody was just talking about E's, and it took me a long time to take E's, but Doves. Everybody was talking about love doves, and how horny it made you, and you know what I mean, and sex was much better and this and that. So I was like, yeah. That was the only reason why I had to try it, because everybody was like, it makes you so fucking horny. You get what I'm saying? And you know, I used to see girls on E, and they would be like, they never wanted to talk to me, but when they were on E, they'd be all over me. I'm like, yeah, you know what I mean? So I kind of knew the effects of drugs and what it did, and when I did try it, I realized how fucking good it was. You get what I'm saying? And you know,
did it influence any of your DJing or any of the music that you were putting out?
Nah, because I tell you, what was going on, we were just mostly into our weed and we never really went down that sort of thing. There was a period where I was banging to cocaine and stuff, you get what I'm saying, and I couldn't do anything without cocaine, you get what I'm saying. It was like, I'm going to do a set, it was cocaine, it was like, you know what I mean? So, and I thought that played a big part in our DJ. I would think in my head that I can't have a good set unless I have a quick line. You get what I'm saying? And then as soon as I have a quick line, I would think I'm going to have a fucking sick set now. And you know what I mean? And so I kind of got into that habit of thinking, oh, I got to have a line before a set. Got to have my line before a set. You get what I'm saying? So, and then it carries on to, I got to have a line before I do this. I got to have a line before I do that. I got to have a line before I go to bed and wake up in the morning.
And when did you realise that wasn't a good idea?
Just seeing the damage and all that. You get what I'm saying? That it's doing to everybody. And you get what I'm saying? And to myself. You get what I'm saying? And eventually, how it would make you feel. You get what I'm saying? And you realise that, you know what I mean? You got to knock this on the head and slow down.
Are you like totally drug free now, or is there the occasional dabble here and there?
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and lie. You get what I'm saying? But I am, like, I'd say 95% drug free now.
When you are 56, it's probably for the best, isn't
that's
it?
right.
You know?
We all can only manage that 5%.
Reason. But you know what I mean? I did, like, you know, I went out Saturday and I was on the boat and this guy, I call him the doctor because he was like a chemist. He just had everything in his bag. You get what I'm saying?
Love those guys.
I was like, damn. And he was just like there for me. He was just like and he just couldn't give me enough of his pharmaceuticals. It's like, you know, I was like, I'm all right.
No wonder you thought this rave on the boat was fucking brilliant.
Maybe it was empty. There was no one on the boat. It was good acid.
So so I've been very good because of my age. As I said, my age is the kind of thing after you reach a certain age, you start thinking, you get what I'm saying? You know, it took me because I used to be able to go on a bender for days and then just like get on with it in the week. And now I used to go on a bender and it used to take me 2-3 days just to get out of bed. My body couldn't. I was like, hold on a second, I'm not that person anymore. You get what I'm saying? Because it lasted for 2-3 days to kind of like get back to normal again, and I just thought my body can't take this anymore. You get what I'm saying?
It takes a producer a week to get over a couple of pints of Stella.
So I'm not going to sit here and lie, but if I do it, it's very occasionally, and I know the consequences, but it's not like where it be a weekend thing where you be phoning around, lining up the things before or whatever, and then when you get to you end up just looking for things, that's done now, you get what I'm saying?
You're listening to the 90s Rave Podcast with Bryan Gee. You can email us, hello@the90sravepodcast.co.uk, and follow us on all your social medias.
So that's it for the first half of R.O.A.R's exclusive interview with V Recordings boss man, Bryan Gee. The second part will be hitting the podcast platforms in 2 weeks. If you're able to spare a few of your English pounds so we can improve our recording kit and continue to bring you quality content, that would be amazing. You can do so at GoFundMe/the 90s Rave Podcast. Don't forget, we're also on all your social media channels. Search for the 90s Rave Podcast. Thank you.